Divante presents eCommerce Talks, where industry experts share their insights about the ever-changing world of e-commerce. Today we'll be talking with industry analyst at commercetools, Dr. Roman Zenner. All right, well, welcome one more time, and I have the pleasure to introduce you to Roman Zenner, which is an industry analyst for commercetools.
Hello.
Roman, thank you for coming, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Roman, there's nobody better to introduce yourself as yourself, so if you can tell us a little bit about your background and what are you doing right now in commercetools.
Okay. My name is Roman Zenner. I work, as I said, as an industry analyst for commercetools. My background is, I started as a freelancer like 15 years ago in e-commerce, where basically, I wrote some books on e-commerce software like Magento, and I spent my time, trying to educate people about shop technology, really. So that, meant doing workshops with customers, also interim project management for customers, and just trying to make them choose the right, piece of software for the right circumstance, for the right context. And then a couple of years ago, the guys from commercetools approached me, and now I'm here at the K5 and doing the industry analyst thing, which means basically, networking, getting to know the industry, getting to know competition, producing white papers, producing case studies, these kinds of things. And next to this, I also run my own blog for a couple of years now. It's called ShopTech Blog. It's in German, where I basically try to do interviews with CTOs and do weekly reviews of the ShopTech world.
Amazing. I watched a couple of. I wouldn't say I understood everything because I don't speak German very well. but I mean the level of knowledge that you're spreading is actually really interesting. Okay. And you were saying about different conferences that you've been attending. In simple words, for CTOs or people who are still a bit lost on how to grow and how to get into e-commerce and how to grow their brand and global expansion and all the buzzwords that you want to throw in there. What are the trends right now? Like what people should be looking at, or what people should be getting their information? Okay, so
I see two things. First is because everybody's talking or has been talking for the last couple of years about customer centricity, and that actually meant nothing to most people. So it was just a buzzword. But now people understand that it's really important to be customer centric, and what that means is, on the technological side, is to build something like PWAs, which means progressive web apps, totally focus on what the customer wants. Moving away from, I show something that my shop system can do, I do something that my template allows me to do. We're moving into a direction where we really control every pixel of the experience. And that's where especially brands are going to, right? Create a very unique customer experience. So that's the one thing, really focus on the front end. Focus also on the front end on mobile devices. And the second thing is cloud. The second thing is really cloud infrastructure. Don't mess around with service anymore. Make sure you've got like a good grasp on your processes and, do your stuff on AWS, on Google. And let those guys handle the load and the infrastructure, the security, and really focus on that front end bit.
Now, this is a very personal question. When we hear cloud, people still scare about putting all my stuff, all my data, all my business is in the cloud.
Yeah.
Why people should trust it now better than a week ago?
Because the first answer is because you've got pros who are in charge of the servers, who really make sure that the servers are secure, the data are secure. It might sound counterintuitive because you might think, well, if I run my own server, it's going to be more secure. But that's wrong. I mean, what we see in the market is that if you talk about server breaches and security issues, it's mostly with smaller hosters or really companies trying to kind of run their own servers. So it's better, you're better off, you're safer, and plus you've got very elaborate and very sophisticated encryption technology these days. So you really don't have to worry about data breach. And even if data should get lost, it's still encrypted, so it's not a problem for you.
I mean, after all, if someone comes to your house and steals your server,
exactly,
it's even worse.
It's not that if you have your server in your living room or in your basement that you're going to be safer. No, that's not the case.
Now, one of the things you guys do at commercetools, you help companies to evolve and adapt their e-commerce solutions or platforms. And one of the things you're doing is moving companies from monolithic to microservices.
Yeah.
Now, how the process looks like for people who are thinking about it.
So what's a monolith in this context is just this big block of software that's just all interconnected, and that you can't really change. So if you change something at this end, you really have to retest the whole thing and make sure that everything runs, which is obviously bad, because there are situations where you say you just want to move a button from left to right, and it ends up turning into $1 million project because it takes so long. That's just horrible. So, and what we're suggesting and what people are doing, and also big companies such as Spotify and Netflix have realized a long time ago, is to split functionalities into what they call microservices, which is like really small encapsulated services that can exist on their own. And the strategy is then to create like a bunch of those services and interconnect them by APIs. And the way to go from the monolithic approach to the microservice approach is to really in a how do you call this? It's the move is you take the functionality bit by bit and say, well, let's first extract the customer section. Let's then extract the catalog section. Let's then extract the payment. And so you move those bits from A to B one step at a time. So it's not really like a big bang migration. It's like a soft migration from A to B. And that's what's happening. And it also doesn't mean that you have to get rid of your monolith altogether. For most people, it means that you can sort of make your monolith more modern by stacking microservices around this whole thing. So just imagine you've got a retailer who sells glasses, and they might want to offer, the virtual glass thing where you can just check out the glass on it. Exactly, yeah. So they might, opt for a standard solution, and they just build a microservice for this particular bit on top. So they can keep both things. So you can keep their infrastructure as it is, and they can add new cool stuff with a microservice. And that's what most people do these days.
Okay, so so it's not something that you have to, I need to shut down my shop for 3 months before my microservices are ready.
Exactly.
It can happen during the...
Exactly, and this is, by the way, this is something you should never do this ever again, because it never works. It's painful, it's expensive, and it's horrible doing these migrations. We've seen millions of euros and dollars wasted in those projects.
Now, what will be the top pro of having microservices? What do you think is the top reason why people should migrate? Is it how easier to use, or how easy to exchange, or what will be your take on that?
It's agility, it's speed. It's just making sure that you can react as fast as you can. So if there's a new thing you have to do, like a new business model behind this, or a new move by your competitor, you want to be fast, and that's the only reason. Because it's not really saving a lot of money. It's not something that you do because you want to save money. It's basically just to make sure that you have a structure which allows you to be more agile.
I should have mentioned that you're a doctor, and I told you before that I thought you were a data scientist. No. But you're a philosophy.
My literature. That's
and literature as well. So
yeah.
So you taken the approach that you taken to this is actually from a human nature, right? This is how people react or interact with the shop, and obviously nowadays we all have an extra limb, which is a mobile phone, right?
Absolutely.
Nobody loses or nobody let the mobile phone go. So how do you think the commerce and e-commerce is moving into the mobile platform? Is it still? Are we there yet, or are we moving forward slowly, or how?
Well, we've seen peak PC usage in 2016. So that was the point where the mobile traffic actually was bigger than the desktop traffic. And since then, we've seen a huge increase in mobile usage. And I guess, Zalando is like doing 80% of its turnover on mobile. So it's really amazing. And it makes sense, especially in the fashion industry. There was this one person that says, well, you actually carry around your mobile phone. It's close to your body as it can be, right? It's close to your heart. It's close to you. You take it to bed, really. So that's
I do.
Yeah, people usually do, and that's something. It's a very personal device, and it becomes more like a personal shopping device. My feeling is that in the Western world, we're not as far as the East, as China and Asia in general. And that, for example, mobile payment is not really there yet. People are not really used to use their phone to pay for stuff. So that's we've got some. We need to develop a bit more in this direction. But for sure, it's really the idea of having, as you said, like another limb. That's really important.
So looking at the environment right now, most companies don't think locally anymore. No. Most companies, as soon as they're created, you're already thinking of your global expansion. Even small companies, when they have a small team, a small tech team, even a small marketing team, or it's just one, and it's a CEO, CMO, CTO all together. What are the first steps for them to move into a global expansion? Obviously, e-commerce focus.
Well, it depends on where you start, really. I mean, is it really a rookie approach? I mean, if they're really, I mean, if it really just the beginning, and I don't know whether budget is an issue at this stage. Yeah. If budget is an issue, I'd really highly recommend building a very small use case to get you going, because most people they tend to over-engineer these things. Even at a very early stage, they go like, okay, in 5 years' time, I'm gonna need this and this and this. Therefore, I need a software which is prepared to do this and this in 5 years. That makes it extra expensive and extra long to implement. Instead, they should be asking themselves, okay, so what's the first thing I need? And for most people, it's just a Shopify, installation or Shopify usage. Just pay 30 euros per month, and that gets you going. And you get wiser on the way. You understand your customers better, and that is so much more valuable than people think. People tend to over-engineer their models and their technology.
Yeah. One of the questions that we usually go through, and this is sort of to close and encapsulate all the advice that you're giving. What would you recommend a good podcast beside yours, of course, a good podcast or a good book, and where people should start building their foundations with?
Well, if you are, you should go for Exciting Commerce. That's the first thing I'd recommend, because they are the guys who actually organize the K5 conference. Yeah. So that's like the mothership of all podcasts. Then there is a Kassenzone, which is a similar business-oriented podcast series.
Where people can find out more about you and your recommendations.
So if you just hit my name into Google, then you'll probably find me, and it's romanzenner.com. It's just my address, and there you find all those links and links to my podcasts and blog posts and these things. The reason why we're doing this podcast as well is because there is still a lack of a technological podcast, if you will. Most people talk about business aspects, business models, and the KPIs, but the tech aspects are still a bit under the radar. So I really hope to see more of those podcasts as well.
Cool. Let's hope we'll generate some sort of environment and
absolutely.
And thank you so much for joining us. It's been great having to talk. And we hope to have you again. And thank you everybody for watching. And thank you.
Thank you much.